for questions for Coach Kelsey.
You feel refreshed after the break for a week?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing, I know, open up the questions, but I do want to make a statement real quick. I'm almost like embarrassed that I'm having a press conference this morning and you guys are here asking questions about my team and me and Florida State and things like that. But, what went down last night at the Yum Center was epic. It was special. Our volleyball team, it was one of the grittiest, guttiest wins that really I've ever seen. When Anna DeBeer went down, obviously it was very emotional. And I sent out a tweet last night, and I specifically mentioned her as our best player and our go-to player. I mean, obviously Elena Scott is first team All-American. I love defensive dogs, and I don't know a whole lot about volleyball. I know it's an unbelievably exciting sport, but listen to those announcers talking about the strategy of the game, and Elena Scott being this defensive specialist, and Pitt has these girls that hit the ball straight stinking down, and Elena Scott's up the sideline, and this girl just hits a missile right at her, and she kind of it must have been coming at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and it kind of deflects off her arm, and they show her, and she's distraught and disappointed that she didn't return that, and I'm like, how can a human being return that or dig that? And her expectation is to do that. She's one of the best defenders in the entire country. But then just to see how those girls responded when Anna went down, the air absolutely went out of the Yum Center, and instead of that deflating them, they rose to the occasion. Again, I haven't been around here a long time, but I remember vividly 1986. The Final Four, and Purvis Ellison won the most outstanding player of the Final Four, and he earned the nickname that went nationwide in college basketball circles as Never Nervous Purvis. And I tried my best last night and this morning. I'm a little bit of a marketing guy. I like to come up with sayings and stuff. I was trying my best to find a nickname for Peyton Peterson. There's a lot of, I tried everything I could to rhyme, so what I came up with was Peyton in a pinch. Peyton in a pinch, because I'm telling you, man, that was as big of a moment as you could possibly imagine for a freshman athlete, and a decorated All-American goes down, who was kind of the heart and soul, emotional leader, one of the emotional leaders of the team, and just to see her step up in that moment and just make play after play and exude confidence. It was amazing. Over 20,000 people at the Yum Center for a volleyball game. I mean, I think it just speaks to where women's sports has gone in the national sporting landscape, where volleyball has gone. Obviously, this is a very passionate volleyball city. The club level, it is just one of the hotbeds in the country for volleyball, and then just to see what Danny has done and what she's built, and just how overtaken this city's become by their team and what they're doing, and just to have the opportunity to compete for a national championship in our home city. Our two All-Americans are homegrown from this city. How cool is that? And I'm so excited for them, and it's going to be a big, big weekend. Obviously, besides that 2 hours where I was glued to the television, my mind is 100% in preparing our guys for an ACC showdown on the road games in this conference or in any conference is our big time games. And I have such respect for Leonard Hamilton. He's the longest tenured coach. He's in our conference. He's a Hall of Famer. I've coached against him for years when I was at Wake Forest, many years, and then 2 times we played against them when I was the head coach at Winthrop. He's a legend. He's an institution in coaching. His teams always play so hard. This team is no different. They're long, they're athletic, they disrupt, they turn you over, they're deep. So we really have to be on it both on the offensive and defensive end. From an offensive standpoint, there is dangerous and as attacking of a team as you're going to find, both inside and out. They have an elite post player. They're very deep with a lot of talented players on the perimeter as well. Obviously, number 12, the big, number 1, the guard are kind of their 2 go-to guys, but they just have a lot of dangerous pieces. They have an elite ability to put foul pressure on you, attacking the rim, daring you to guard without fouling. Obviously we have to defend at a high level and do our best to limit them from being able to get to the free throw line. And then we have to sustain our poise and play with great poise on the offensive end, as they're as good as anybody in the country at disrupting. The week, to answer your question, a long time ago when you answered me the question, was, do we feel refreshed? I mean, when you have an opportunity like this where you have a longer layoff, because we haven't had a lot of those, you can kind of go back to your basics. Obviously, with the way our roster is right now and our depth is more limited, obviously it's important to keep our guys fresh. This time of year, everybody is nicked up, everybody's banged up, not just the Louisville Cardinals, everybody is. But obviously there's that rhythm and that balancing act, that fine line between continuing to move the needle in practice with our competitiveness and our toughness, which is what we hang our hat on, fine-tuning our system on the offensive and defensive end. These last couple weeks have been kind of a rediscovery of who we are because of the changes on our roster, and I think our guys have done a really, really good job of that. Obviously somebody's, I'm sure, going to ask me about Kadir's process. He's coming along. He's not going to be ready for this weekend's game, but we're hoping really, really soon. Doing everything he can besides obviously take contact right now. It was on his non-dominant hand, so he's able to do a lot of things on the practice floor besides contact. And obviously that's going to be a big boost to us to increase our depth when he gets back.
I wanted to follow up on something you said about going on the road. Isn't it reassuring? You've got all these experienced guys. It's nothing new to them. They did a good job at Kentucky. Is that sort of...
Yeah. It's no secret that one of the strengths of our team from day one was our experience and our depth. Was our depth, our experience, and that showed obviously when we were at Kentucky. Obviously down in the Bahamas, it was a lot of friendly fire down there, but that was a big time atmosphere under really, really bright lights on a really big stage, and our guys performed at a high level. So, I feel very, very comfortable going into on the road venues in the ACC with the amount of experience that we have on our roster.
Pat, Florida State under Leonard Hamilton has kind of been known for their length and size, and this team's no different. Have you had much experience in your coaching career dealing with teams that have that much size over your career?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of teams at the Power 5 level that that have size and length and talent, and Florida State is obviously no different. Obviously, they have a DNA and a brand, and it is always going to be, man, we're going to come at you defensively, we're going to disrupt, we're going to make you uncomfortable, we're going to try to turn you over. We've played several teams this year that kind of have that as their defensive MO, and I think our guys have handled it really well. But they're as good at what they do in terms of disrupting and turn you over as anybody in the country. And like I said, offensively we have to play with great poise, and defensively we have to meet that physical challenge and guard really good players, really athletic players, but they also have very skilled, talented players as well. So we have to be able to defend their system and like I said, do it without fouling.
Pat, you've mentioned that who's in the starting lineup really doesn't matter all that great, but Terrence Edwards coming off the bench the last 3 games, he seems like something's just clicked in his game. Can you just talk about, I guess, what's transpired for him, since that move?
Yeah, I don't think it had anything to do with whether he was in the starting lineup or out of the starting lineup. I just think, Terrence is an elite player. He's an elite scorer, and you just knew at some point it was going to click. And and I think everybody sees that. I see that, his teammates see it, our fan base sees it. You could just see the confidence rising in him. You could see him getting into a rhythm. On both ends of the floor, he's playing really at a high level, and that's going to continue. So, like I said, I don't think it had anything to do with that. I just think it just started to click. And man, he can really, really go. He's a heck of a talented offensive player, and we're going to need him to be a big time player, and that's what he is.
Pat, with the way that Florida State can come at you in waves and how he substitutes and plays a bunch of people, do you have to change anything for this game because of the depth issue, or is it just, hey?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about this, and I've been asked this question quite a bit. We've obviously had to make some tweaks to our offensive approach since the injuries have occurred, and our depth has kind of become a little bit different than it was at the beginning of the year. And we've made those adjustments, and I think our guys have adapted nicely. To every opponent, I'm sure they're preparing for us. They're going to have to make some adjustments to what they do based on what we bring to the table. We're going to have to do the same thing for them. And it might not just be in the area that you're talking about, but it's adjustments all over the floor in our system to be able to defend what they do and vice versa.
I was going to ask just how much you get out of a scout when you know that a team has just faced, and they just faced a team that you've already played in at Winthrop. Do you get much out of that game, watching the tape on Florida State? Winthrop?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. Obviously, there's familiarity with Winthrop. You know their tendencies, you know their players, you know what they do. So obviously, being able to see a future opponent against somebody that you always played against, there's some hidden advantages in that to a certain extent. But it doesn't matter who a team plays when you're breaking down tape and you're scouting a tape. There's things you can learn, and whether that's more of an advantage or less, I don't know, but it is kind of when you're watching the tape, obviously you're very familiar with that other team's actions, so there are certain things that you can pick up from that.
Something that stood out about the game in Kentucky was just, they were able to get out and I think they had like a 24-2 advantage in fast break points. Is there anything you can do with the depth that's limited to either try to play faster on fast breaks, or just try to assure
for us to play fast?
Sorry. So like, with the depth the way it is, are there ways for you to get out on more fast breaks, or also just try to shore up the defense in transition?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an area that we didn't execute well against Kentucky, and that's an area that we definitely need to improve on. They hurt us in that area.
Pat, Watkins, number one for them is their leading scorer, but it seems like 12 is the guy that gets a lot done. I mean, can you kind of speak on what, I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think every team you look at, obviously, you point to kind of who their leading scorer is and best players are, but I think first and foremost, you guys already mentioned this, their depth is one of their strengths, and they're talented way down their roster, and they come at you in waves, and they play a lot of guys. Obviously, 1 and 12 are their I guess two go-to players. Obviously, they're two leading scorers. A very, very good inside-outside threat. One is an inside-outside threat too. Although he's a guard, he's a perimeter player, but he's a strong, powerful guard that can post up mismatches, but with an innate ability to generate fouls. And guys that can really generate fouls know all kind of the tricks of the trade to be able to get fouled, and he knows all of them, and he's really, really good at it. I have a ton of respect for him. But when you look at his stats and his metrics and his efficiency, you can't forget about the fact that he can shoot it as well, and he can beat you from the perimeter. And then, man, the big kid 12 inside, he's a load. Very skilled, very talented, very good passer. He can score in the post. He can pass out of the post. Very good rebounder. A really, really good player. Both of those guys are all conference caliber guys in our league, which is one of the best leagues in the entire country. So we have our hands full with both those guys. We have to be on it in preparation. We got to be able to execute our game plan, to be able to get a big win on the road.
You mentioned several times new identity, rediscovery. How would you sum up, or how would you describe your new identity?
I mean, our new identity is always going to be what our identity is, and that's we're going to have grit, we're going to have toughness, we're going to compete all the time. That will never, ever, ever change. When you say rediscovery a new identity, it's just playing. I'm sorry.
A style, sort of, that what you're.
Yeah, I mean
flowing down?
it's not as different. Like, but when you can play 10 guys like we like to do, obviously, man, you're tilting the floor on every single possession. You're emptying the tank in everything you do, and fresh bodies come in, and you can wear opponents down. That doesn't mean that we're still not playing. With everything we got, we're going to play as hard as we can on every single possession all the time. There's less possessions in our game right now. I mean, obviously, we're always going to be an up-tempo team that pushes the break. We get stops and misses, and we push out on the break. We're probably not as breakneck on makes as we've been in the past. That doesn't mean we're taking it out of the net and walking it up by any stretch of the imagination. But, if you look at our efficiency numbers or our metrics, or, since our depth has been limited, there's fewer possessions in our game. We were probably top 20 in the country in pace, somewhere near there, 20 or 30 in pace, and we're probably, 150, 160 right now or something like that. So our pace has definitely changed a little bit, but that doesn't mean, we're hike, huddling it up, walking up and running a set play every time. Even if you wanted to do that, you can't do that anyway against these guys, because they're just constantly coming after you and speeding you up and forcing the issue. They want to dictate to you by their pressure, and we got to make sure that we're playing with poise.
What are your possession numbers from earlier to now?
You'd have to look it up, but we're probably somewhere around 66 offensive possessions a game right now, and it was probably over 70. That doesn't seem like a lot, but that's pretty significant. I don't know how many of you guys follow KenPom, and I don't mean to do an advertisement for that, but those are metrics that I value and I look at. You can get a really good snapshot synopsis of a team. Even before a preparation and a scout starts, just by kind of studying their efficiency numbers. It bases everything on 100 possessions, so it takes kind of pace out of it. But it tells you the number of possessions in a game, so you can easily tell what team strengths are, what their weaknesses are, what their DNA is, what they do even before I'm watching an ounce of tape. So it's really easy when you start a scout to look at what a team's pace is. You can obviously tell how much they value pushing the ball and playing in transition.
Pat, how important will pressure defense be in this matchup? Up to this point, you guys have been really good at generating turnovers from the other team, whereas Florida State's been kind of susceptible to that.
Yeah, I mean, we you asked about our identity, that toughness, tenacity, that playing hard, that never changes. So on the defensive end, we're always going to try to disrupt. We're going to try to turn you over. We value, just like Florida State does, deflections and disrupting the rhythm of an offensive team, and that'll never change. But, I think two similar teams in terms of they hang their hat on being blue collar and playing really hard, and it'll be a really good college basketball matchup.
I know you focus all in on this game, but when it's over, you do have another week off and Christmas. How do you handle that with the guys? Do they get a few days?
Yeah. I mean, I've always been that way. My mentor Skip Prosser was that way. We let the guys go home for a couple days and see their family. I think at this time of year, obviously Christmas is a very special time. The birth of my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ is celebrated, and I just think it's very, very important during that time to be able to reset, get away, clear your mind, spend times with loved one, and special, cherish and celebrate and cherish this special day in this special time of year.
When you think back to this really tough stretch at the start of the season, have you had anything amass tough as a head coach as those games you played? At the start of the season, I think it was 6 games were in the quad one. Have you ever had something like that as a head coach?
No, I have never, and I think it's pretty rare. Obviously, there's no, there's no hiding the fact that we've we played a very difficult schedule. I think, the strength schedule, I was looking at KenPom yesterday, I think it's top 10 in the country. So, no, it's probably been the most difficult preseason, kind of non-conference schedule that I've ever faced. But you always look for the silver lining, and when you come out the backside of it, I think it gives you an opportunity to learn a whole bunch about your team, teach you a bunch of lessons, give you a bunch of things that you need to work on moving forward. I say all the time, the season's a lifetime. There's ups, there's downs, there's goods, there's bads. Babies are born, people die. Again, I always say that because Coach Prosser always said that. But throughout the course of that time, from June 5th when you come together till when the final buzzer sounds, whenever that is, the important thing is that you can continue to climb and continue to get better. There's going to be dips, there's going to be ups, there's going to be downs, there's going to be big wins, there's going to be gut-wrenching losses. That's just the way the season goes. But continuing to stay the course, stay steady, have excellence in the daily process. I always say the results will take care of themselves, and we've experienced some really good wins, we've experienced some tough losses, but they've all been learning experiences, and our guys are better because of it.
Yeah, I was gonna ask just like how much more, like just how those tough games maybe kind of force this team to maybe grow faster than if they were starting with not playing top 5 teams like every other game.
Yeah, Coach Prosser saying always was you can't sharpen your teeth eating oatmeal. I've said that to you guys before, and we've had an opportunity to sharpen our teeth against some really, really good teams, and the lessons learned will serve us moving forward.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.